Angela Cervantes is the Mexican-American author of several award-winning middle-grade novels, including Letty Out Loud, Gabby Lost and Found, and Coco, the junior novel that accompanied the blockbuster Disney Pixar movie. Angela began writing stories featuring Latina characters as a child because she wanted books that represented her and her community. She joins me today to discuss her work and the importance of diversity in literature. Angela, welcome, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Gracias.
What is your family's immigration background?
Mexico.
Okay.
My family is from Jalisco, Mexico, and then the other side of my family is from El Paso, Texas.
Jalisco, Mexico.
Jalisco is a state in Mexico, and it's the home of Guadalajara, which is the second largest city in the Mexico, after Mexico City, of course. And it is a beautiful country, a beautiful state known for its tequila, known for its mariachi music, and just known for its folkloric dancing. A lot of the music that we see in Mexican culture comes from Jalisco.
You got me at tequila, but then really got me at dancing. So, and you're now in Kansas.
Yes.
You don't think that there would be a large Mexican-American population in Kansas, but I understand there is. Why is that?
We're here. We're absolutely here. What happened is my abuelo, my grandpa from Jalisco, when he was a young man at the age of 14, at that time, many young Mexican men were leaving their homes because all sort of strife going on in Mexico politically at this time. And they traveled across into Texas, California, followed the railroad for work. And that's why so many Mexican Americans in Kansas, Nebraska, Illinois, you'll find they live very close to where the railroads are. They followed the work. And then they settled in Kansas, Illinois, Nebraska, anywhere where they thought, hey, this place looks nice. I found good, sturdy job. I'm going to stay here and settle my family in. And that's exactly what happened with my abuelo.
You were born in the United States.
Yes, so I'm second generation.
Second generation. But you kept your culture. I hear it in your voice. I hear it in your enthusiasm for your culture. How did your family keep your culture and not assimilate?
One of the things that I think my abuelos did was they never really ever spoke English perfectly. They just never had the chance. They were home, they went to work. They went home, they went to work, and that was it. And so the Spanish, the Mexican music on Sunday mornings, the classic Mexican ranchera music, we grew up with that. And then my dad and mom did something very special. They raised us and kept us in a Mexican-American community called Oakland in Topeka. And again, everyone's families worked for the railroads. Everyone had the same sort of immigration journey where everyone's grandpas or grandmas had come to work and then they all settled there. And then, of course, the Catholic Church moves in, builds schools, builds churches. And so it just made it a really nice community. Before Mexican Americans were there, were German immigrants. And so we still had a lot of families, old families living in our community that were from Germany that had names like, I remember Schuenbacher and things like this, like Mrs. Schuenbacher who lived across the street, and so I am sure the German Americans probably were like, who are these Mexican Americans moving in, That is sort of the journey of immigrants, It's always a new rush and new blood coming in. And our community was so rich in its Mexican American community. I mean, we grew up with Mexican Americans that were engineers for the railroad, that were Army vets, that were coming home. We grew up with teachers and doctors, but also we grew up in a place that like every year we'd have a Mexican fiesta. We'd celebrate quinceañeras, which is, when a young woman turns 15. And I'm grateful for that because I'm very proud of my community. I think it's beautiful and I love it. It gave me a beautiful childhood.
And you had mentioned, you were living across the street from the Schumachers, the German immigrants who came before you. And that really is the history of every immigrant community in America. One immigrant community comes from one area and they live there for a generation. And then the next immigrant community comes in from a different area to that same spot, and there becomes a whole melting pot of cultures, and that's what makes America great.
It's beautiful, right?
Yeah. So when did you know you wanted to be a writer?
I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was a child. I was an avid reader growing up. I loved books. My sister and I used to write limericks, funny little limericks back and forth to each other all the time. I just didn't know how to become a writer. And I remember that sort of what really put the spark in me that I really wanted to be a writer was that when I was in the 5th grade, I was such an avid reader, I had finished every book in our 5th grade class. And I remember Sister Judy coming up to me and saying, Angela, what can I get you next? And I said, I would really like a book with a Mexican-American girl like me. And she was like, okay, I'm going to find that for you. So a week goes by. And then one day she comes up to me and says, Angela, I tried to find this book about a Mexican-American girl like you, and I could not find one. I am so sorry. You're going to have to write these books yourself because they simply don't exist. Wow. And I said, maybe I will. It sort of was like this moment in my life where I felt a little sad too, because I was like, are we not important enough? Are we not special? Are we invisible to people? Are our stories, nobody wants to read them? They don't like us? I started writing. And I would write all kinds of crazy stories. And, one of the reasons I'm a writer today is because my teachers encouraged me and all my girlfriends encouraged me. All my friends would gather around me and say, like, what are you writing next? I'd be working on a new scary story to tell them about La Llorona or someone, and the kids would always be like, oh, read us more, read us more. And that's when I realized when I would see them smile or laugh at some sort of cultural reference that they could recognize, that they could see themselves, and even my silly little stories at that age, that I was onto something, like they needed them as much as I did. So that always stuck with me. I ended up becoming, in high school, I was the editor of my school paper. In college, I became an English creative writing major. So I always just knew my path had to be writing. I just didn't know if I could make a living off of it. I didn't know how to get a book published at this point. So I had to learn how to do all those things.
Do you know the statistics on how much each demographic is represented?
We're lagging way behind. There are still many, many books published by sometimes non-Latino writers about Latino characters. Sometimes there are books written mostly by white authors about white characters. And that's simply not the demographic we're looking at today.
Is it less authentic if a white writer writes about a different ethnic group?
That is a really important sort of argument and discussion we're having right now in children's publishing, is that as a writer, I feel like a writer can write about whatever they want to, right? Mm-hmm. Many have and done great jobs. But if a white writer is going to write about a Latina child experience, they better do their research. You know what I mean? They better really know that community. And then they better ask themselves, why am I the one to write this story? And what have they done to help lift Latina authors so that they can tell their stories? When I was in college, an English major, writing my stories, I remember being told several times that no one would buy a book about a Latina character, that they simply wouldn't. There wasn't a market for it. Publishers wouldn't do it. And I remember being like, should I be writing about white characters? But I wanted to write about my community. So it didn't stop me. I said, I don't care. I'm going to keep trying.
Why did you choose to write for the middle school age group?
For me, it was always middle grade. I knew I wanted to write books for elementary age kids. And that was the age where I fell in love with books.
How do you even come up with ideas that you say children would be interested in reading about this idea?
What I first try to do is write the books that I know that I would have loved at the age of 10 years old. So I stay very true to that little Angela in my heart, in my soul. They're always there inside you, right? When I was a little girl, I loved animals. So I knew I wanted to write a book about Latinas like me who loved animals and wanted to protect them and take care of them. One of the things I did with my first book, Gabby, Lost and Found, is I got together a group called my Young Editors, and they're a group of kids between 4th and 6th grade. And every month I would send them like 10 chapters of my latest book. We'd get together at Barnes & Noble. This was before Corona, and we could all get together at Barnes & Noble and not have to wear masks. And I would buy them their favorite drink, and then we'd sit around and ask questions and talk about my manuscript. And they would give me feedback like, no kid talks like that, or I think you meant that part to be scary. It wasn't very scary, or, I don't know why this character does this. I just don't like You mentioned Gabby, Lost and Found. Tell me about the book. What is that about? So Gabby, Lost and Found is my very first book. It's my debut novel. And it's a story about Gabby. Gabby Ramirez is originally from Honduras. Her mom is from Honduras. Her mom traveled from Honduras to the United States for a better life. And Gabby is volunteering at an animal shelter. But before she's volunteering at an animal shelter, she comes home from school one day and her mom has been deported. Her mom worked at a dry cleaning factory and it was raided, and her mom happens to be one of those taken in. So Gabby is dealing with this separation from her mom, that her mom has been taken, her mom has been deported, and she finds her strength and her voice by volunteering at this animal shelter and sort of dealing with like, will I ever see my mom again?
How involved do you get in a book for a 10, 11, 12-year-old about the immigration system?
It's more emotional, but I do give little hints. I give hints that one, they did try to find a lawyer to help the mom and get her out of the detention center, but they deported her so fast. I do give hints that, Gabby has this idea that her mom will be able just to come back and easy. It'll be an easy trek. She's did it once before. She can do it again, but times have changed. It's more dangerous than ever. So there's little hints like that.
Mhm.
But because I am writing for children, I do have to be careful. I've also gone to schools where kids have come up to me and whispered in my ear that Gabby is their story, which means they've had a parent deported. And they always want a hug, and I always give them a hug, and they tell me that's my story. The Gabby is my story.
How do you reconcile writing for a 10, 11, 12-year-old that, you do want to make a happy ending with the reality of if a mom gets deported, it's extraordinarily unlikely she's ever going to come back to America?
Everybody wanted me to have that sort of happy ending. Mom magically shows up, life is good again. And I couldn't write that novel. I'm giving away spoiler alerts, okay? That was not the reality I was seeing and learning. I know a lot of kids were mad. They're like, why didn't you bring her mom home? Is there going to be a book 2 where the mom comes home? And it was like, look, that's not the reality, so I couldn't write it. And if it makes you angry, even though you are young, you can still write your senators. You can still learn everything about it. You can be an advocate for immigration reform. If it makes you angry, then you can take action in other ways.
Now, you also wrote the junior novel for Coco, and you had talked about growing up not having any books with Latina characters in it. What was that like for you to write the junior novel that accompanied Coco, the movie?
It was super exciting. I remember the email I got from Disney Worldwide asking me to join them on this project, and that it was going to be a movie all about Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. And I got super excited because I've grown up with Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead all my life. We've always celebrated it. When our family passed on, we would create an altar for them every November, their favorite things on that altar. So I felt super excited, but I was also a little weary because I was like, why is Disney taking our culture and taking our holiday and doing a movie on it, and how are they going to represent it? That concerned me a little bit. And so I did research, and I saw, there's all these really great Mexican artists and Mexican American consultants involved in it, many who I had known or heard of and respected. And once I saw them on board, I said, okay, they're going to do this the right way.
Right.
Then I felt even more comfortable. And then I wrote it out with them by my side, and then I got invited to the Hollywood premiere, and it was super fun. I just felt like it was a book and a movie that came out at the right time. This is 2017 when it came out. And this was when we had our president in office saying that Mexicans didn't contribute anything. They were parasites. He was saying so many horrible things about our community. And this movie just kind of swooped in, gave our communities, our families, our children something beautiful about Mexico in a dignified way that just made everyone feel so good. And we needed that.
You also wrote a book, Letty Out Loud. What is Letty Out Loud about?
So Letty Out Loud is my latest book. It goes back to Gabby Lost and Found with the animal shelter. And her story is a little different from Gabby. She's from Tlaquepaque, Mexico. And she is an ESL student, which means an English as a second language. And she is just trying to prove to everyone that she can speak English, write English as well as everyone else. It was inspired by all the many English ESL students I met in my school visit. I always ask for a reader to come up and read with me. And so many times, just by luck, I'll pick a student that I didn't know was an ESL student that was only been speaking English for 2 years. And then after this visit is over, these teachers or librarians will come up crying, going, oh my God, you don't realize you picked Tariq. Tariq's only been speaking English for a year. And to see him up there reading in front of all his friends, was just amazing. So I was just so inspired by their bravery, their courageousness. You know, we so often look at people who don't speak English, or if we have a little bit, slight little accent, that we're somehow intellectually deficient, when that's the absolute opposite is true. These are kids who can speak 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 languages where they come from, right? I'm sure you've seen that in your work.
So what advice do you have for aspiring writers? What can you tell us?
Well, I think one of the first things, if you want to be a published author, you must read and write every single day. Reading and writing go together. You know, one is breathing in, one is breathing out. So they cannot be separated. Besides reading and writing, practicing your art, your craft every day, I would also suggest not being afraid to share your work. You know, I shared my work at a very young age, and people were always giving me feedback and encouraging me. And you cannot be afraid to share your work.
Where can people find more out about you, buy your books?
You can go to my website, angelacervantes.com. You can go to Scholastic's website. They're my main publisher for Letty Out Loud. And so you can go to Scholastic. A lot of people are familiar with Scholastic books and Scholastic book fairs. You'll be able to find them easily there. And also your local bookstore, your independent bookstores, they'll have them. If they don't have them, you'll ask them and they can order them for you very easily.
Tell me, what is your American dream? Have you reached it?
I do feel like I have reached it, and it's very close to my personal mission in life, which is to write the stories of my comunidad and to use my voice and any success that I have to help lift up their voices and stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. That's my American dream.
Well, Angela Cervantes, thank you very much for coming on.
Gracias. Thank you so much.